How Elizabeth II dealt with motherhood.
The baby is wonderful, good as gold, trying to sit up and weighing 15 pounds 12. He smiles and gurgles at everyone and makes everyone happy.
Elizabeth wrote this to her midwife, Sister Helen Rowe. The 1964 letter was recently found and is up for auction. The baby in question is Prince Edward. He was just 5 months old when Elizabeth wrote the letter. Charles, who was 15 at the time, also gets a mention.
Charles, I'm thankful to say, is better but very frail as yet.
The future king was recovering from a bout of pneumonia. Elizabeth and Philip had 4 children. They welcomed their firstborn son Charles in 1948. He's the only one who was born before his mom became queen. Elizabeth ascended to the throne in 1950. Princess Anne was born the same year. Prince Andrew followed in 1960, and Prince Edward arrived in 1964.
Motherhood is the only job which matters,
She once said, but she found it hard to balance it with her duties. In 1953, Elizabeth embarked on a Commonwealth tour. Over the course of 6 months, she visited 13 countries. Royal protocol required her to leave the kids. Charles was 5 and Anne was 3, so they stayed in England and were mostly raised by nannies. Elizabeth and Philip often only saw their children twice a day. They only met after breakfast and at tea time. Elizabeth and her sister Margaret had been raised in a similar way. This was customary for British royalty at the time. When Charles was 3, the public got a glimpse of this dynamic. Philip and Elizabeth were returning from a month-long visit to the U.S. The young prince greeted his parents at a train station. He was accompanied by his grandaunt Princess Margaret. Elizabeth rushed to kiss her mother. Then she leaned down and gave Charles a peck on the top of his head. She immediately turned her attention to Margaret.
Britain's heiress presumptive puts her duty first.
The BBC announced.
Motherly love must await the privacy of Clarence House.
Still, Elizabeth enjoyed being a mom when the nanny was off duty. She bathed her children and read to them. She always tried to find time to tuck them in at night. Charles was just 5 when a governess was appointed for him. She oversaw his education at Buckingham Palace. Philip sent Charles to his own alma mater. It was a famously strict boarding school in a remote part of Scotland. Charles hated it. He got sick several times, but Elizabeth didn't visit him. Charles said she was not indifferent so much as detached, and however, shared a special connection with Elizabeth. They bonded over fashion and a love of horses. Like her mother, Anne was a member of a Girl Guides company. Elizabeth arranged it so Anne could socialize with girls her own age. Andrew and Edward received more affection. They were born when Elizabeth was older. Andrew was the Queen's favorite. She took a full 18 months off after his birth. She enjoyed taking care of him herself. It was a luxury she didn't have with Charles and Anne. With Edward, Her Majesty went a step further. She broke royal protocol. When giving birth, she allowed Philip to be present at childbirth, a royal first. The Queen did away with another archaic practice. The children were supposed to greet her with formal bows. Elizabeth considered it silly. In his first speech as king, Charles III spoke of Elizabeth.
We owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example.